Okay, noting the time and the presence of a quorum, I now call the Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee to order. Good evening, everyone. This meeting is being taped and broadcast live by ActonTV. I want to draw everyone's attention to the annual spring town elections coming up in Acton on March 26th. It is a contested race for school committee. John Peterson is running, as well as Eileen Zhang and Ginny Kramer. Sorry. The Boxborough deadline to submit papers is April 2nd for the elections in Boxborough on May 21st. We now move to item 3, which is public participation. If there's anyone here who has anything they want to share with us, not on the agenda, you may come up to the podium. We do have about a 2-minute limit on speaking, just to really take control of the time of the meeting. We do have a lot of business this evening, and I just want to share with you that I know it's kind of frustrating, but we actually can't deliberate. We can respond briefly, but we can't deliberate about anything that's said during public comment because it hasn't been posted on the agenda. It's not that we don't want to, but we're prohibited by open meeting law to do so. So I just wanted you to know that.
I'll be super quick. Christine Russell, and I am here on behalf of the Acton Finance Committee. And the Finance Committee would just like to formally request that the school committee begin developing some sort of policy regarding your proposed stabilization fund. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, is anyone else here to speak?
Good. As you may be aware, Jeff Johnson, the head coach of the girls and boys swim teams, passed away unexpectedly almost 3 weeks ago. His untimely death occurred 2 days before the boys team was set to compete at the state meet, leaving them without their mentor and #1 supporter. Jeff's, or Coach as most people know him, passing has left a hole in so many lives in the swimming community of Acton-Boxborough. Over his 45 years of service to our towns, he has touched countless numbers of lives. My request to you all this evening is the same request I submitted 16 years ago. Name the Acton-Boxborough High School pool in honor of Jeff Johnson. Coach began his relationship with the AB community back in 1974 as the pool and fieldhouse director. In '77, Coach took on the role of head coach of the high school boys team and created a program with a sterling reputation. Under his tenure, Coach guided the boys teams to 392 dual meet victories, 13 DCL titles, 10 Massachusetts North sectional titles, and 9 state championships. In 2002, he took over as head coach of the girls team, where he was able to help the girls to an astonishing 134 wins. Coach led the team to 17 top 3 finishes at the North sectional meet and 16 top 3 finishes at the state meet. To further add to Coach's impressive list of accomplishments, I will read to you what is shared on his AB Colonial Club bio. Jeff's accomplishments have been recognized in Massachusetts and nationally. The National Federation of State High School Associations 2016-17 Coach of the Year, the Boston Globe Boys Swim Coach of the Year 5 times, and Girls Swim Coach of the Year 2 times. In addition, Jeff was named the Middlesex News Coach of the Year 6 times and the Little Sun Coach of the Year 8 times. Jeff was honored as the Eastern Massachusetts Swimming Coach of the Year 6 times and elected to their Hall of Fame in '98 and received their Jack McDonald Award in 2013. The NYSCA David H. Robertson Award was presented to Jeff in 2005, and Jeff has served as the Massachusetts Boys NYSCA State Representative from 1980 to the present, and has held the same position for the girls since 2006. Jeff coached the highly successful AB Town Swim Team from 1975 to 2014. He's been the head coach and owner of the Patriot Swim Club, founded in '92. As if this is not enough, Jeff is an inductee of the International Swim Coaches Hall of Fame in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I mention all of this to you only to be able to say none of this mattered to Coach. What Coach cared most about was developing hardworking, motivated, successful, coachable individuals. His goal for himself was always aimed to be a mentor and positive leader in all of his swimmers' lives. There's no way of knowing just how many people Coach helped, but what we do know is that for over 40 years, he gave the youth of AB a safe, supportive, and positive place to go after school. Whether it was with the high school teams or Patriot Swim Club that ran out of the high school pool, whenever you were around Coach, you always had someone that believed in you. In my time as a Division I collegiate swimmer, I swam for 2 different nationally recognized programs and coaches. As I reflect on my time as a collegiate athlete, I am constantly reminded how my successes in the pool always seem to correlate with my coaches feeling accomplished and successful. However, on the occasions where I was not successful, my failure was entirely my own and had no bearing on my coach's actions. I mentioned my own experience only to bring contrast to how wonderfully different Coach was. When his swimmers succeeded, it was their success, not his. When his swimmers did not have the race they wanted to, it was his failures. It was his failure, not the athletes. For all the successes swimmers have had under his guidance, from high school state championships to nationally ranked club swimmers to Olympic trial qualifiers, you would be hard-pressed to ever hear him admit that he had anything to do with it. Coach was caring, loving, hardworking, dedicated, honest, and extremely modest in his accomplishments. In fact, I believe if he could be here today, he would be embarrassed by all this attention. However, I know he would be secretly smiling on the inside because all he wanted to do was make a difference in people's lives. I mention all this about Coach to you because if there is someone that embodies the qualities of this top-notch school, it is Jeff Johnson. He acted with integrity, gave more than he could have ever received, and deeply cared for the youth and their families in this community. After leaving for college in 2002 is when I realized what a gem we had at Acton Boxborough with Coach. It is at that time that I submitted my first request to name the high school pool after him. Now, with his unexpected passing, I would like for you all to consider this matter once again. The support that has been demonstrated in this matter has been overwhelming, to say the least. I began an online petition to gather information as to whether people would be in support of this honor. Hoping for at least a few hundred signatures, this petition has gathered over 1,100 and is growing every day. The comments people have left also demonstrate what a deserved honor this is for Coach. I've written some comments, but in the essence of time, I'll skip them. It is at this time that I make the formal request to bypass the 3-year waiting period and ask for a unanimous decision to be made to move forward with the naming of the high school pool as the Jeff Johnson Natatorium. Please show the community that you are thankful for Coach's service and dedication and that you are willing to honor his contributions in making the youth of Acton Boxborough strong, supportive, and caring members of the community. As one current high school swimmer commented, I hope by the start of the new fall season, in the absence of our head coach, friend, and mentor, we'll at least be able to honor him daily by training in the pool named after our beloved Coach. Although Coach may have worn a path around that pool deck over the last 42 years, he has left a bigger mark on all of the hearts of the people that knew him. Please help preserve his legacy and impact on the Acton Boxborough community so that others who come to the pool will recognize greatness once Coach there. Thank you for your time.
My name is Jennifer Corbley. I'm an Acton resident. I've lived here for about 12 years, and I'm here tonight to voice my support for Amy. I met Amy through Jeff, and I'm a parent of a swimmer who swims for Patriot Swim Club and the high school swim team, and I've worked with Jeff for the last 4.5 years at Patriot Swim Club, and oh gosh, this is harder than I thought it was going to be, sorry. I've watched Jeff guide swimmers, his student athletes, through sport and life. Not only was he present at swim meets, but he was often present at graduations and weddings, and that's just a testament to the connection he made to the people that he coached and to the families that he worked with. His 41 years of coaching and accolades have earned him respect and admiration from his swimmers, their families, this community, and his high school and USA Swimming colleagues throughout New England, throughout the state and throughout New England. The AB High School pool was Jeff's second home, and those who walked on its deck and swam in its waters were his family. And so I just ask if we could please consider naming the pool in Jeff's honor, if we can consider getting that on an agenda for a future school committee meeting. Thank you.
Is there anyone else here for public speak? Sure.
Hi, my name's Kevin Ma. I'm a former swimmer at AB also. I grew up swimming a ton. I was on the town team with Coach, and then I was on PSC with Coach, and then I was on the high school team with Coach, and I really just want to say that I can't imagine why we wouldn't name the pool after him, given the fact that in the past 30, 40 years, like, his name is completely synonymous with swimming at AB. He mentors kids from their youngest ages. He identifies talent. Even the ones who like don't believe in themselves, he still like pushes them harder. Like, I personally was a pretty bad swimmer when I was younger, and he still honestly believed in me and helped me get to where I am today. And yeah, I guess, yeah, I just ask that. I really think that this would be the most appropriate thing to do, given his passing, given how much he has given this town. Thank you.
I want to thank everyone who came here to speak for Coach. I did not know him. The outpouring of love and respect at his passing was stunning and very moving. And I also want to thank Amy, who flew here from Pittsburgh in order to come speak with us this evening. Looking for, should have tagged this page, but we have the policy in your packet on naming facilities. And I was going to read to you from it, but I will pass. Oh, here it is, right here. Okay. It's hard to hear? Yep, okay. So we have a policy on naming district facilities. It's policy FF, and its companion procedures FFR in our policy manual online. The first paragraph reads that we believe that naming or renaming a school building is a matter of incredible significance and one that deserves thoughtful attention. And it is also rare. It's not a usual occurrence that we do this. The committee believes it should not be influenced in its decision by personal prejudice, favoritism, political pressure, or temporary popularity. That is also in the policy. Paragraph 2 reads, if a suggestion or petition to name or to dedicate a facility is brought forth to us, we will first decide whether the naming or renaming of that facility is necessary and appropriate. And if a decision to move forward with the naming is made, we will convene a screening committee pursuant to the procedures in FFR. Okay, I just wanted to remind everybody of what it says in our policy. Okay. Having said that, I'm going to recommend that this request be forwarded to the policy subcommittee for consideration and kind of a deep look at that in light of our policy. And I would ask that committee to come back to us later in the spring with a recommendation on whether to proceed or not with this naming. And then we can deliberate together as a school committee on how we want to move forward with this proposal. Okay? And I want to thank you so much, everyone, again, for coming in. We're going to move to item 4 on the agenda, our student rep updates. We have 2 this evening. I see Michael Chang in the audience. He is a regular. We're honored to have him here. We love his updates. I'm going to invite you up to the podium. He will be followed by representatives from Project 351. So let's start with Michael.
Okay, so I realize I'm not alone this time. Do we have to do anything? Oh, okay. I realize I'm not alone this time, so I'll keep it quick as usual. But PC is taking a victory lap this week, for lack of a better way to put it. They have 2 state winners back-to-back this weekend. Rosie the Riveter, The Book of Everything. I hear it's great. I haven't seen it, but they have a great program every year, basically. Also on the academic side, course recommendations were, as Arnav informed you last meeting, were basically made last week to teachers, recommending levels, which are stressful for a lot of people. And those conversations were had last week. They've been entered into PowerSchool. Courses will be selected next week and in the next couple weeks before the scheduling magic takes place. I heard to be Tina Vanessa in that scenario. But so I think Mr. Shin probably know better, but I think the 8th graders also, this is around the time where, at least when I was in 8th grade, I started to realize, oh wait, high school is next year. Like that's a thing to start thinking about. And also, this week is World Language Week, which has become a little bit of a tradition. The World Language Department hosts a series of events, etc., encouraging the learning of languages and the sharing of cultures. It's a little bit of, I believe, what Mr. Light was referring to last meeting in embracing our diversity and that cultural pool that we have. Today there was sort of an immersion field trip thing that actually didn't go anywhere, but those who decide to participate, the Spanish classes spend all day in the East Common, immersed in the language, I guess. Tomorrow's food. Language classes, it's an assignment that they cook something, and that's always fun. And in general, it's just something that the World Language Department puts on to sort of celebrate what they're trying to teach. And finally, as a last note, I'm grateful that people more qualified were able to address Coach Johnson's passing.
I just wanted to say that Rosie the Riveter and Book of Everything are being performed Friday night and Saturday night at the high school. And so I would really encourage you to come, not because my son is in Rosie, but because it's supposed to be a really great time. And also, having 4 kids in Spanish, my kitchen is trashed right now.
Thank you for sharing that. So Elizabeth Brooks and Marion Stuntz are here, representatives from Project 351. I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, but I actually don't know much about Project 351. I do know that in 2011, it was started as a one-day event for then Governor Deval Patrick's second inaugural, and it blossomed into this service learning, leadership, and celebration of youth. So I'm going to hand it over to you. I'm sorry.
No, that helps. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the invitation to share with you a little bit about Project 351. As Diane said, this has been something that has been taking place since 2011, since the governor's inauguration. He wanted to incorporate a component of his inauguration to celebrate service, and so the whole idea was to recruit one 8th grade student from all 351 municipal communities in Massachusetts to come together for a day of service. After that, it took on a bit of a life of its own, where they wanted to make this an annual event that not only included that day of service, but then extended not only throughout the rest of the year, but then found entry points and mechanisms for those students to then continue that service and the skills that they developed beyond the additional 6 months. So since that time, every year we get communication from Project 351, which is now a separate entity within the state, asking us, saying, every year we'd love to have one 8th grade student from Acton and one 8th grade student from Boxborough who you feel really has reflected and demonstrated an ethic of service, a commitment to things larger than themselves, and sort of a tendency and a natural instinct to really think about the experiences of others. So what I do every year is then pass that along to our staff and say, hey, do you have any ideas for 8th graders who might fit that? And it's very satisfying, first and foremost for me, that we get a lot of names. We have a lot of students for whom those labels and characteristics apply. And without fail, there are a number of students whose names are repeatedly mentioned several times. And so naturally there are a number of students who kind of become obvious choices. And this year, the obvious choices for us, and excited to introduce, are Biz Brooks and Marion Stunt. So Biz and Marion are going to teach you a little bit about Project 351 big picture, as well as a little bit about their own experiences. So I'm going to hand it over to them.
I'm Marion Stunts, and this is Biz Brooks, and we're from Project 351. So Project 351 was originally founded by Carolyn Casey, and every year Project 351 communicates with all of the schools across Massachusetts and takes one 8th grade representative from each town in Massachusetts, and they come together to make a bigger impact. Project 351 is a community of 8th graders who want to make a difference in the community, and Project 351 allows them to come together and actually do that. And and it helps them develop leadership and community service skills. So our roles and involvement in Project 351, our role is to create change and help out bigger organizations and create an impact with those organizations. So throughout the year, we do various different service projects, and we work with 395 other 8th graders who value the same values as us, leadership and community service. It originally started out as 351, but it's grown, so there's 1 or 2 from each town as representatives. And then, so launch day is the first day when everyone comes to meet each other, and we do launch day events and activities.
So every year we do something called Spring Service, which is pretty much just like an annual service project for us kids to take the skills that we learned on launch day and actually put them into effect in our own communities, in our hometowns. So this year we're partnering with Cradle Stick Crayons, which is an organization that helps many children in Massachusetts get the clothing and donations that they need to be able to go to school and feel safe and proud of the clothing that they wear to school and things like that. There's a lot of big statistics up there, like since 2012, it's impacted over 95,000 kids, which is a lot of kids in this state who fall under the poverty line, which we're trying to help impact and make it easier for them in their school systems too. We're really excited to have the opportunity to work with an organization that will impact so many people in our state, that don't just impact those around us, but get all the way out there to the edges of the state that we even haven't visited maybe. And that we're also excited to see all of us ambassadors and all of us kids grow and learn in our leadership skills, so that we can see our grade level and the people around us grow to become amazing leaders who can eventually make change in our world. And in the present day, we kind of need some of that. So, yeah.
Any questions?
Jenny?
How did it grow to 385? Is it because cities get to send more than one kid?
Yeah, I think the bigger cities have 2 to 3.
Okay.
Because there's 351 towns, but I think Boston has a few more representatives.
There's 351 cities and towns in the Commonwealth. Yeah. Okay. Just curious. It's a wonderful project. Thank you very much for coming to tell us about it.
So how much, I love the whole thing. How much time do you put into this?
I don't know. At least for us, for spring service, we have, well, actually, overall our service dates, we have, I think, around 5 or 6 service dates throughout the year. We have spring service, and, well, launch day is one of the only days where all of us as a community come together to serve. And during that day, we all went out into the greater Boston community to do things like work in homeless shelters and paint schools, things like that. And then spring service, since it's all on our own, I've partnered with Marion, and I'm sure a lot of other kids have partnered with kids in towns close to them or cities close to them. And that, I don't know, we've taken spring service, our spring service lasts about 2 weeks, so we're taking donations for about 2 weeks, but we have planning time for about 3 or 4 weeks before it. And then we have a few other service dates throughout the year to commemorate certain events and certain things. And yeah.
Are you currently taking donations for Cradles to Grants?
Not currently. We still have to create the drive, but I don't know when. March 25th, we start taking donations for Cradles to Grades.
Well, if you want to send us the details. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a really fantastic program. Item 5 on our agenda is statement of warrant and approval of minutes. We do not have minutes for approval this evening, but we do have, count them, 8 warrants. So they're now being circulated. If you would just sign them and pass them on, greatly appreciated. Vendor warrants 19-017 and 017A, 19-018 and 018PR, and 3 student activity warrants in the total amount of $3,669,407.95, and we have a payroll warrant P1918 in the amount of $2,335,725.42. Okay. Item 6 on the agenda is a superintendent's update.
We'll try that again. Good evening, everyone. I won't belabor the point, but, as we heard earlier, just prior to February vacation, we lost really a beloved member of our Acton-Boxborough community in Jeff Johnson. Jeff had coached boys swimming since 1977 and boys and girls swimming since 2002. That is a long tenure as a swim coach. Over the last few weeks, I've had an opportunity to hear many of the stories about the positive impact Jeff had on a multitude of students over the years and span of his career, as well as all of the close connections he developed within the community and within the schools in particular. I think what was clear to me is that while he's going to be missed as a coach, mentor, colleague, and friend to many, his legacy is certainly going to live on in the impact that he had on many lives he touched throughout his career. So I just want to recognize Jeff. I also want to congratulate the boys basketball team and put a little public service announcement out. The boys basketball team has a big game coming up tomorrow night, if anyone is around. The basketball team has advanced to the MIAA Central Finals. This is a fantastic achievement for a team. We're very excited to support them. If you're around and available, they play Algonquin Regional High School tomorrow night at Worcester State University at 6 o'clock p.m. And I'm sure that we will have many within the community there to support them. I will also say that my former district has the girls' game right after at the same location. So I'll get to, yeah, exactly. I'll get to see a little bit of both. I also want to just thank a number of people. So this has been a big week in the budget process, and we've received a lot of continuous support for the budget proposal and warrant articles we've proposed over the course of the week. We were fortunate to have a number of both the Acton and Boxborough boards vote this week to support our FY 2020 budget and warrant articles regarding the proposed bond and capital stabilization fund. This week, both select boards in Acton and Boxborough voted unanimously to support all of our warrant articles, and the Acton Finance Committee also voted unanimously to support the operating budget and proposed bond, and were nearly unanimous with one dissent in support of the proposed capital stabilization fund. I'd like to thank all of the members of those boards for their continued support of the outstanding school district that we have. And the last update I have for you is another plug for an upcoming event. Unfortunately, last Saturday, due to inclement weather, we had a number of people scheduled to participate in the annual Civics Bee sponsored by the League of Women Voters. The good news is that in case you missed it, there's another opportunity because it's been rescheduled for this Saturday, beginning at 12:45 in room 204 of the Acton Town Hall. The district is always well represented in this, with many individuals participating, which includes students, faculty, and school committee members. I'm also excited to take in the action this Saturday and be able to watch a little bit of that. So if you're around and available, it's going to be, I hear it's a highly competitive environment. I think Marie said her team was guaranteed to win. Oh, your husband's team is guaranteed to win. Okay, got it. All right, so thank you.
Okay, item 7 on the agenda. We move to 2 school improvement plans this evening. I'm going to invite Chris Whitbeck up from the C.T. Douglas School, followed by Lynn Newman from the Gate School. As you know, in our policy BBFA, going to root everything in policy tonight. The Ed Reform Act of 1993, from that was born school councils, and from school councils were born school improvement plans. So this is policy and procedures for us, and we welcome Dr. Whitbeck here this evening. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I'm Chris Whitbeck. I'm the principal of Douglas School. This is Jenna Lareniga, my assistant principal. We'll be talking tonight about both parts of our school improvement plan. So achievement, it's really what we're all here to do every day. Equity, engagement, and wellness. Thinking about growth for students in their engagement and their wellness, and what do they need to be able to achieve. And that's the idea of equity, is really getting them each what they need. So we've spent the year so far looking at that, and my staff teases me because I'm really super excited about this, and I use words like fantastic and exciting, and it's probably because it has a lot to do with statistics. But we started with, really what is achievement, and how do you improve it? And these are some of the things that we got from our staff. Something as simple as reaching goals, to finding what aspects of social and emotional motivation will lead to more meaningful progress and self-regulation in academic areas. So it's a huge spectrum of things that we have to consider when we're thinking about achievement. And the second thing we did with our staff was ask, what is it that you think positively impacts achievement? My favorite thing up there is love. And it ranges from there to feeling supportive at home and school, to mindsets, and many different ideas that our staff had about what positively impacts achievement. The next question we asked them was, so how do you know? Right? So you work with kids all the time, you lay your hands on them, and you get a sense that they're achieving and they're growing. And so here are some of the things that they shared with us, were some of the ways that they really knew. And those are all very important, and they all provide us with little pieces of data that we put together to get a sense of how students are learning. But really what we wanted to do was ask the question, what is the most efficient things that we do? Is it our reading programs? Is it our math program? What really is going to help us as educators figure this all out? And Deb Bookus and Dawn both suggested to me the work of John Hattie, and I knew a little bit about it, but we dove into it very deeply as a staff this year, and this is where it really became exciting for me. John Hattie has collected so many studies of education and done meta-analysis of them, which is basically an analysis of the analysis. And he uses a statistical tool calculation called the effect size to standardize the studies so that you can see really a level playing field of how one thing affects student achievement. And his outcome that he was looking at was always student achievement. Effect size is basically the mean of the pre and the post divided by the standard deviations. It becomes much more complex when you're talking about 160 studies, but we can look at effect sizes of what we're doing in our classrooms to see how effective we are at things. So identify an outcome, identify an intervention, look at the effect size, and then figure out what that all means. So I know that homework is never a topic that people disagree on. So I just thought I would use that as a simple example of Hattie's work. So he's looking at student achievement. Everything is always student achievement. And what's the effect of homework on student achievement? Well, 161 studies, over 100,000 students. And what his conclusion was that student achievement does go up with homework, but not noticeably. Now, if you look at the effect sizes, we start to look at some numbers. 0.29 overall, that's K through 12. A 0.5 effect size in secondary schools, and a 0.08 effect size in primary schools. So what does that really mean? An effect size of 0.29 is really the difference between somebody who is 1.82 meters tall. He is from Australia, so all of his measurements are like that, and 1.80 meters tall. So if you were looking at two people, you really could not tell the difference between them. So, and what he goes back to is, but what does the teacher's information show, right? What are you looking at? And so he's done this for over 800 different interventions. And the effect size that he has identified that will lead to more than 1 year's worth of growth. We have to assume that what we're doing regularly will lead to a year's worth of growth. What we should be looking at is, how can we be better than that? How can we improve achievement? And he says that effect sizes of 0.4 or above are where we should really be putting our money. He has a little barometer. The good news is that most everything we do has a positive effect. But where we should really be spending our time looking is at the 0.4 and above effect sizes. Right? What's the big one? What's number one? And we spent most of the first part of our year looking at all of the different things, from math instruction to reading instruction to home life to children's own perception of their learning. This is it. This is the thing that over and over and over again shows up as having the most impact. Collective teacher efficacy. An effect size of 1.57 is almost unheard of in any of his studies. And it comes up again and again, and he's looked at that collective teacher efficacy several times. So it's teachers working together to really look at evidence of their own impact of students. And do they take the time to challenge one another? Do they truly believe that they have an impact? Like, that they can and should and are responsible for the impact on students? And do they look at their own data that we've shown you at the beginning and say, all right, what do I need to do differently in order to have that impact? So that's where we are right now. We're doing a mini study in mathematics to collect data, to look at it, and really raise the questions of it on a small pilot scale before we take off next year and really start to have some conversations about calibration, about what the standards are, about what a year's worth of growth looks like, and then work on our teams to be able to challenge one another and really question what we're doing and look at it and look at John Hattie's studies to see what is it that we're doing on a day-to-day basis that can make an impact. So that's the nutshell study of visible learning. I'm going to turn it over to Jenna.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for having us here tonight. I am going to talk about the second goal in our school improvement plan, which is responsive classroom for parents. Over the past 2 years, we've done the work, or 3 years, excuse me, with getting the teachers ready to implement and implementing it in our school. And then this year, we took on educating the parents, which I think is a very important piece in the community aspect of being in a school. Let's see. So in order to educate the parents, we went to the first PTO meeting, and we actually had a morning meeting with the parents present. No worries. Which was exciting because they got to practice it and see it live. And we also made a video to share with parents so that they could see what they look like in the classrooms. So here's an example of the video. Do I have to hit something? No. Okay.
Hi, friend Holland. Hi, friend Simon. Hi, friend Isaac. Hi, friend Holland. Hi, friend Sheridan. Hi, friend Isaac. I have to say, that is probably the most enthusiastic greeting I have heard, and it's all thanks to you, Amin. All right. Good morning, Chase. Good morning, Megan. Good morning, Seth. Good morning, Luella. Good morning, Luella. Good morning, Pete. Good morning, Miss Luella. Good morning, Nita. Hey, look, it really ties in nicely to their visit, and I'll explain why. I'm thankful for my friends. I'm thankful for my teachers. I'm thankful for nice teachers. I'm thankful for learning. I'm thankful for my school. I'm thankful for Mrs. I'm thankful for my teachers. I'm thankful for recess. Recess, my teachers, and my friends.
The way we play Zoom, we keep our hands together just like this. When I'll do this, I love what you're doing it. Alex is doing a great job. I'm going to keep them like this. We're not clapping, we're just keeping them together. We're going to send the Zoom around the room. Can we try that one time? Just going to send it. So we're going to go Zoom.
Zoom. Zoom.
Excellent. And now let's add another part to this. And this is called eek. Can we say that? Eek. Eek is where you change the direction of the Zoom. You can only eek
Zoom.
one time.
Eek.
Zoom, zoom.
Zoom. Zoom. Zoom. Zoom. Zoom. Zoom. Zoom. Zoom. Zoom. Zoom.
Zoom.
It's worth mentioning that the students didn't know we were coming to videotape, and all of that was just very authentic footage of what goes on in our schools for the first 20 minutes of the day from 9 until 9:20. The second part that I spoke with parents about was interactive modeling, which is a process that you use when you teach a specific skill or a behavior that you're expecting. And we did it with them, I modeled it for them, and we played a dice game. And I showed them each of the steps that you go through. And what was amazing about it was at the end, they were curious about ways that they could apply that in their homes with their children. So it really has proven to be a great communication tool with the parents to help be supportive to them in their homes, as well as effective in our building for creating community. Thank you.
You willing to take questions?
Yeah. It's on the slide.
No. Oh. It's fine print. Yeah. Any questions? Angie?
Hi, Chris.
Hi.
Yeah. So for the study that you point out, the 1.57, and the other factors that above or below 1.4, however, will you look at the other data as well, or you're only focused on the 1.57 one?
So no, the teacher efficacy, collective teacher efficacy is going to be our major skill set. However, in order to really use that, what we'll do is we'll look at where our students are, where they are performing strongly, where we're not really. The important part is really to identify where we're not having the greatest effect, and then use the work of Hattie and all of those 0.4 and greater studies to say, oh, well, we could be doing more of this, or we could be doing more in the area of guided reading. We could, right? So that's where once our teacher collective efficacy practice is really strong, that's where his work continues to inform us.
Just to follow up, so do you have a couple areas that other than the teacher efficiency that you identified that you're going to look at, or you're going to start from there?
For instance, this spring, we're collecting some studies in mathematics. We've worked with Heather Haynes to identify some assessments that we can collect data from kindergarten through 6th grade in the area of number sense. What will happen is that we're going to identify students who have not met the standard at this point. We're going to use the prescribed conversations around teacher efficacy and protocols that go along with that to identify what our practices are in mathematics and what we can be doing differently with those students that are not meeting the standard. And then next year, we will do a larger study in a subject area. Something like language arts and writing, for instance, will require a lot of work in agreement on what the benchmarks are and what the standards are. And one of the things that Hattie says in the efficacy area is a student should be able to go to any teacher who teaches a subject and have exactly the same standards and exactly the same grading. So that takes practice.
So you inspired me to look up Hattie because the quote, "Know thy impact," really wowed me. There are apparently 256 things that he's measured the effect size of, and that was number one, teacher efficacy.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. That's a lot of things to measure.
So yeah, if you Google, there's some great charts that take from the teacher efficacy all the way down to the negatives.
So my question to you, you're going to use this now in math, is that correct?
Pilot this spring.
Okay. And Hattie tells you what the effect size is, and does and you had a definition of teacher efficacy, but to build that, Heather's helping you just build that to customize it for your.
So Heather's helping us with the data collection.
Okay.
So one of the things that you really need to identify is what is the standard that you want kids to work towards, and math is nice because that's defined for us very clearly, and you can use very simple assessments to find out where children are. So we've chosen something rather basic, the idea of number sense, which we know that if children don't have a good number sense, they're going to struggle in multiplying fractions. They're going to struggle with decimals, so forth and so on. And so everybody's taking 10 students from their classroom that we've selected randomly and doing these assessments. And on March 21st, we're going to get together and start to look at that data. And just first identify, okay, what do we notice in this? What questions does it raise for us? And then we're going to get into some of the harder questions of, well, what are you doing about that? So.
Thank you. Anybody else? Paul?
So I'm intrigued with this technique. So is this something that you would apply in a given year to be able to make adjustments by the end of the year, or is this something that you would collect the data to inform you for the following year?
So once you get good at it, it can be a daily adjustment. The idea is this is a small part. I'm sure you've heard Peter and Dawn talk about MTSS. The idea of collective teacher efficacy really, I think, is at the basis of MTSS. And the idea that you are constantly collecting data, making data-driven decisions that inform your practice. And that's, on the small scale, but also over a 6-week period, perhaps, where you're looking at, does this intervention really work with the students that I have? And the other key part of that is that teachers firmly believe that they are the person and the effect that is most responsible for student achievement.
Okay. Thank you so much. That was fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna ask you to hold your question, just being mindful of the time, Eileen. I appreciate that. Okay. Lynn Newman from the Gates School is here for our second school improvement plan presentation of this evening.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lynn Newman, and I'm the principal of the Gates School. And I'm pleased to be joined with Priscilla Kodig, the assistant principal. Tonight, I'm proud to share with you an update of the Gates 2018-2019 School Improvement Plan, and would like to take this opportunity to thank last year's school council for helping to develop this plan. Our school council members included Priscilla Kodig, 6th grade teacher June Montepalooso, our 6th grade parents, Rebecca Rosen, Manoj Thadini, Manny Pandy, and our school resource officer, Michael Araclio. The first goal I wanted to share with you is civility, respect, and kindness, growing a caring community. There was a great enthusiasm and spirit from the Gates community to continue to offer school-wide activities that foster civility, respect, and kindness. In our second year, we made plans to expand our repertoire of school-wide initiatives that promote a caring community. Here are just a few of the activities we have participated as a school community. This year, we are celebrating the Gates 50th anniversary. We are also celebrating seasonal themes that help to bring together a school community. In the fall, students created leaves of gratitude that we display in our cafeteria. In February, classrooms decorated their doors with acts of kindness hearts. And in the spring, we are planning to send notes of encouragement as we end our school year. When we decided to celebrate Gates' 50th anniversary, we all agreed it would be fun to make it a year-long celebration. In September, our 5th and 6th grade chorus decided to name themselves the Singing Monkeys on behalf of the musical group, the Monkeys. and they've been performing a lot of the songs, but we started with Daydream Believers. We have all school meetings each month, and we have been incorporating songs from the 60s and lots of fun facts about the Gates School. Did you know that the Gates School was originally named the Spruce Street School? The Spruce Street School opened in September of 1968. It was renamed in memory of the school physician, Dr. Paul P. Gates. We learned that there was no kindergarten at Gates in 1968, and as you can imagine, the students were shocked to learn that there was also no internet, no smartboards, and no computers. Each morning, we have a sixth grader that reads the morning announcements over the intercom. In addition to leading the school in the Pledge of Allegiance and announcing student birthdays, we decided it would be fun to add the Gates 50th anniversary trivia of the day. Our library media specialist, Sheila McGovern, created the Gates 50th Challenge to inspire students to read 50 books this year. And today at our all-school meeting, we've learned that we have 113 students who have already met this challenge. And our student council is leading our culminating activity, which is to build a time capsule. The time capsule will be filled during our June all-school meeting, and we'll be putting all the items into the capsule. We need to find a special place to put the capsule. One of the students said, well, where will we bury it? And I'm like, oh. The student was not aware of the MSBA building project at the Gates School. So we will have to find a nice spot for our time capsule, and it'll plan to open in 2068. I don't expect that I'll be there at the opening, but. And Priscilla will share a little bit about responsive classroom. As you've heard, I think most of the schools are implementing responsive classroom.
So we've continued to embrace the responsive classroom philosophy and implement responsive classroom strategies. As summer schedules permit, teachers are completing the 4-day summer responsive classroom workshop. To date, Gates has 14 trained teachers. Unfortunately, 2 of these teachers will be retiring in June. This year, we have focused more attention on responsive classroom school discipline. Each teacher received a copy of Teasing, Tattling, Defiance, and More to add to their library of books and resources, which include Morning Meeting, First 6 Weeks of School, and the Yardstick Child Development Trifold that we give to parents at the fall conferences. As a school, we have increased the professional lending library with positive approaches to 10 common classroom behaviors. And to enhance our professional learning for teachers, we purchased the following kits: Positive Teacher Language, Teaching Discipline in the RC Classroom, and Morning Meeting. In August, we examined some of our school-wide procedures from the perspective of helping all students feel safe and successful throughout the school day. We spent time as a staff discussing student behavior expectations from a responsive classroom perspective to shape our lunch and recess schedules. We adopted, I'm not sure this is still on, is it still on? Okay. We adopted the we adopted the responsive classroom recommendation to have students go to recess first and then to lunch. This change was well received and implemented, especially with classroom assistants supervising students in these 2 spaces. As a staff, we spent time discussing and planning for lunchroom procedures and rules that would help all students enjoy their lunch with classmates. To complement the all-school rules, we wrote school-wide rules for the cafeteria and playground. In addition, we also closely examined our bus dismissal procedures and bus behavior expectations. This time was well spent and allowed us to ensure that the expectations we had for students were consistent and positively reinforced in all areas of the school. The all-school rules were developed as a staff based off from classroom rules. Students identify their hopes and dreams for learning, and classroom rules are written so that all students can achieve their hopes and dreams. Throughout the school, we have some banners and posters for the school rules, cafeteria rules, and recess rules. As a result, we are able to model positive behavior and help students understand their actions when rules are broken. We use logical consequences. If you break it, you fix it. You might lose your privilege, or you may have to take a break. Each classroom has a take-a-break chair that students can use to regroup and take a break in order to get back to learning.
And our third goal is to understand and support the social emotional needs of all students. We felt it was important to build on the district's work with Challenge Success. This year, the Gates staff has been reading the Behavior Code by Jessica Minahan and Nancy Rappaport. This book has proven to be an excellent resource in better understanding the causes and patterns of difficult behaviors and to identify strategies for getting students back on track so they can learn effectively. We have been using this book as a resource during our building-based professional Thursday afternoons to examine students with anxiety-related behaviors and students with oppositional behaviors. Each grade level team has used a brainstorming questionnaire to help them focus on one behavior or concern for a student. The team then discussed the underdeveloped skills that might be contributing to the challenging behaviors. Using this information, we are learning how to create a FAIR plan for students with challenging behaviors. A FAIR plan includes functional analysis of the problem, accommodations, intervention strategies, and responsive strategies. In Chapter 3 of the Behavior Code, it's called Get Away From Me, and it helps to explain students with anxiety-related behaviors. We have learned that approximately a third of teens have an anxiety disorder during their school years. When students experience extreme stress or anxiety, their reaction can be to fight or argue with their teacher or peers, flight, which for some students that means leaving the classroom, going to the bathroom, visiting with the nurse. And other students might freeze, which means they are in the classroom, but they're actually not really doing their work. They're sitting there and they're unable and frozen to do their work. Jessica Minahan shared this video clip at a recent Saturday workshop that was offered through the district. And the clip is from Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And we've shown it with our staff, and it's really very powerful because we're looking at an adult in a stressful situation and how the question and being in that position impacted her ability to answer the question. And it certainly demonstrates the negative effects of anxiety and how it impacts her working memory.
How many emails, documents, and text messages have you already sent today? Grammarly helps you write easy to understand, error-free messages that people will want to read. It's simple to use and works wherever you're writing.
Yeah, that's okay.
Here it is, Patricia. If a euro is worth $1.50, Patricia, please stay with me. 5 euros is worth what?
I am so bad at math.
No, but wait a minute, you got to show.
When I get nervous.
No. Patricia, Ohio State.
I'm just not telling you. Exactly my point.
Stay with us.
Okay.
Okay, so 5 euros will be worth how much at $1.50 a piece, okay?
I can't do the math.
Would it be 30 quarters?
No. Wow.
Would it be 50 dimes? Would it be 70 nickels or would it be 90 pennies? So, Patricia, just think about it.
Put everything on credit.
30 seconds, and your time starts now.
If a euro is worth $1.50, 5 euros is worth what? A, 30 quarters, B, 50 dimes, C, 70 nickels, or D, 90 pennies?
Sorry, just run through those again. You cut up there.
If a euro is worth $1.50, 5 euros is worth 30 quarters, 50 dimes, 70 nickels, or 90 pennies? I'll throw in the other 25,000. As long as I don't have to tell you how many nickels it is in...
No, but look, the reality is that you have not given up and you haven't lost
I
yet.
haven't. We got a beautiful 25,000.
Yes, sweetheart, we can get 50,000, but you've got to just think about this.
Oh, I can still answer it?
Yes.
Oh!
You didn't say... You don't lose till you say final answer if you have the...
Okay.
Here we go.
Wait, hold on. I'm so nervous.
Just say it. Say it right now,
I
Mama.
can't. I got to multiply it first in my head. So a euro's worth $1.50, so 5 euros. 5 times 5 is 25. Carry the 2. 5 is 5, 6, 7. That means 750. So... I don't know.
Yeah, no, wait a minute. You know this. 50 dimes is how much?
50 cents. 50 dimes?
50 dimes.
Oh, it's $5.
There you go. 90 pennies. How many pennies make $1?
Okay, so 100.
All right. 70 nickels.
This is the worst question you could ask me.
70 nickels. How many nickels in $1?
So 7 times 5, that's $3.50.
That leaves
Okay.
30 quarters. How many quarters in $1?
All right, I'll give you my answer. All right, my answer is A, 30 quarters.
It is painful. It really is painful to see it and watch it. And yet at the same time, when you think about fight, flight, or freeze, if she could have run out of there, she would have. And her ability to just stop and think. But her anxiety was so great that her working memory just did not allow her to solve the problem. And Regis was very patient with her. But, you know, when you think about it, we have kids in our classroom that actually feel this way. And although it's a third of teenagers, we're not sure that, you know, we're not saying it's a third of our elementary, but we see anxiety in every classroom. So we feel as though spending extra time talking about anxiety, the impacts on learning, and then the emotional piece that is connected with it is really important work. So that's something that we're very proud to be working on. And so at the Gates School, our goal is to grow a caring community. Each student is unique and beautiful, and together we have a masterpiece. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, and very proud of my staff and my students and all my families.
Thank you, Lynn. I think, Paul, you have a question? Oh, and then Mary, sorry.
Mary actually was first, but okay. So I'm curious what's going in the time capsule.
So we just did some brainstorming. So our student council is overseeing the project. But what we did is we've asked each grade level to generate some ideas. And so we have a shared doc, and every grade level is looking at it. But we want everyone to have each class put some things in. They realize they shouldn't probably put videos in because in 50 years we might not be able to watch the videos. So I think there'll be a lot of print and artwork and maybe some t-shirts. But I'm really leaving it up to the students and the teachers to come up with ideas. We've asked all the teachers. I'll be putting something in. Priscilla will all be adding to this time capsule. And I'm not sure how big it needs to be. And it will not be, it'll be inside. We will not bury this capsule. Yes.
So I'm actually thinking about my own response to that video. Do you talk at all with the kids in the classroom about what you're trying to do with students? Because I could see, well, I'm thinking of two perspectives. One is a kid watching a kid and needing all that extra time and then maybe making fun of or, pressuring them. But also, if I were the adult in that situation, I might feel extra pressure because of how long I'm taking with one student when I have another 20 students sitting there in the room with me. So how do you deal with that dynamic in the classroom?
And I think what we've really learned is it's the underdeveloped or lagging skills. So when we see, Jessica describes a student with anxiety as a can of soda. So for kids, it's all, they shake it up. So you don't see every student, you're not really sure who's anxious until you open it and then you see this reaction. And so what we look for when we see some challenging behaviors, you're looking for the why, what is contributing to it. So if a student's having a hard time in math, then it's predictable that just before math comes, they need to go to the bathroom, and then they might spend a little extra time down there. And then they're doing everything they can to avoid the math. So you begin to see patterns over time, and I think the most important thing is to sit down with the child and be very honest. Gee, this looks really hard. So perhaps you might preview the lesson. That might be a way of reducing some anxiety. Everyone has anxiety. So it's easy to talk about as a class. There are kids who have strengths in certain areas, and some of the anxiety is going out to recess. Who will I play with? So we talk about that. In some kids, we have different plans, whether they're in their special ed IEP plans or in our FAIR plans, which will be for all students, and that will help them to prepare when you go out. Let's think about two people that you could go out and play with. What's an activity you could do? You can do Foursquare, and they have an idea. And then they're much more successful. But to go out and know that it's hard to break into a group, it can cause a lot of anxiety. So what happens is they don't want to go out to recess. And the cafeteria, one thing that we did add this year, we used to have tables which would hold 10 students. If you think about 22 students, you might have 2 or 3 kids at a separate table. So we now have family style, one long table, which reduces the challenge of where am I going to sit. So anxiety is everywhere. And I think we've all felt it at different times. And so how do we overcome it? And trying to teach the kids how to be resilient and to practice, we model, and a lot of compassion. Yeah.
I read the responsive classroom. There is one, okay. So there is a responsive classroom, and on the number 2, after 1968 Gates School, you modified. I'm not sure if I heard exactly the same. You modify the daily schedule to have recess first and then lunch. What's the reason,
So this is definitely a responsive classroom strategy. And so the idea behind this is that if you have recess first, it gives the kids to run around, get it all out, and then they come in. They're willing to come in because they want to have lunch. They're hungry. They're able to come into the cafeteria, and they are a little quieter, they're settled, and they're ready to eat. Traditionally, we have had recess, we've had lunch first, and they finish very quickly because they want to go out. They start to act up a bit because they want to go out. And then they go out, they have their recess, and then they do not want to come back in. And so that can be a challenge for some students. When we shifted the assistant model, we were able to have our assistants, our classroom assistants, go out with the students. And so what that means is we have some kids out at recess while another grade is indoors having lunch. We didn't have the staffing capacity to have this model of recess first and then lunch. So we have found it to be tremendously effective. And we know that because we were always asked to manage challenging behaviors as a result of recess. And I think it's a combination of the switch, and I also think having the classroom assistant who works directly in the class with the student, knows each student, is able to better support the children. So we found that to be, it's a very subtle schedule change and incredibly effective.
Okay, I'm going to move on, given the time. I just want to thank you so much. Sure. Really exciting work going on, both at the Douglas School and the Gates School with Jessica Minahan and John Hattie. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
We have one additional presentation tonight. This summer in July, I was sitting at a Starbucks in Stoneham. I was working out there, and I plugged into a webinar. And I want to thank the Mass Association of School Committees for sending this out. It was called School Board Communication at Risk, and it was fascinating. I listened to the webinar on headphones in Starbucks, and I thought, my gosh, this is something that really needs to come before school committee. It was a survey, and the driving questions for the survey were, how prepared are we, our school committees, to deal with and talk about cyber risk? What is our role in managing cyber risk? How do we invite risk, and how do we manage secure information as school committee members? So thank you so much, Amy, for coming to help us understand this in a deeper way.
Thank you, Diane. It's great to see you all tonight, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and talk to you all about a topic that I think we all probably have a pretty good idea or have had some sort of contact with, and that's cybersecurity. So I'm curious, how many of you have gotten a phone call from a friend or a relative letting you know that your email account or your Facebook account or one of your social media accounts is sending out these really strange posts with links and stuff that you don't typically send out? I see some heads nodding. Or worse yet, how many of you have been on the receiving end? You get a post from a friend, hey, this has got to be good. It's a free coupon from Michael's. Only to click on it and pretty much have your computer never work the same way again, right? I see some heads nodding. So, as I mentioned, I think this is a topic that we're all really familiar with in some way or another. For years now, this has been on the forefront of the big business, the banks, the for-profit companies. They have been working really hard to make sure that they're not the next headline in the news talking about the latest cybersecurity breach. And so you can see here the very comprehensive world of cybersecurity, but they're focusing on the next generation firewalls. How are they securing up their cloud services? They're studying user behavior analytics and making sure that their employees are up to speed on acceptable use policies and procedures. But it's not until recently that schools and school districts have begun to take note of the importance of cybersecurity. And when you think about it, that makes sense now, because schools and school districts, just like AB here, now we've embraced technology. We've been using it quite a bit. And we understand that it is a core piece to innovating our teaching and learning environment. And at the same time, well, guess what? We're now collecting and have some data that these cyber criminals, might find valuable. Not might, they do find this data valuable. Cybersecurity incidents in the K through 12 educational technology markets, it's been growing, both more common and more significant, unfortunately. And like Diane mentioned, from the NSBA cyber risk report in your packet, cybercrime damages are projected to reach $6 trillion by the year 2021, and the U.S. Department of Education has actually issued warnings now to schools in particular, that we are being targeted by cyber criminals. like I mentioned, we have data that's valuable to them. Student records, birth dates, we have access to payroll information, social security numbers, online account information. These are all pieces of data that if it got into the hands of the cyber criminals, like I've said several times, they would find this valuable. So we have to have a better understanding of how exactly these cybersecurity breaches how are these breaches occurring? What's going on here? I pulled up this graphic. It's a few years old, but it's still relevant in this sphere. And you'll see the top two. I'm sorry if you can't see it in the audience, but the top two mainly are occurring through human interaction with the data, right? With technology. People not paying attention to their emails, just clicking a link, as I mentioned before they actually realize, hey, who sent me this link? Or a user that's just worried they're going to forget their username and password, and so they write it down and put it under their keyboard or in the top drawer. Other breaches, so the human interaction is a big piece. Other breaches that are occurring are through vendors, vendor management. So when you think about all of the cloud services that are out there and the different applications that you are using, these entities are also collecting data and sharing data. So if a breach occurs in one of these agencies, what does it mean? Does it expose other agencies to the data? Does it expose other agencies to having their data breached as well? And finally, another one that I wanted to touch upon was, the one where somebody comes onto campus, hops on our guest network. They have tools, they have resources. What can they access? Where are we vulnerable? What are they able to penetrate by just getting on our network? Are our network resources secure? So as you can see, it really is an endless possibility of ways, and unfortunately what's making this more difficult are the cyber criminals. They're creative. Not only are they technical, they're creative, and they're really, really making it difficult for people to feel confident in what they're doing. So one of the things that we had to do here was to figure out how can we reduce the risk. And fortunately, thanks to these for-profit companies and the fact that this has been around for a while, there are three main categories to focus on. We have administrative safeguards, the technical safeguards, and the physical safeguards. Administrative is focusing on end-user training, making sure that people are aware that this is out there, giving them the information and the training such that they are thinking before acting with technology. The other piece of this would be looking at policies, updating those policies. I'm referring to acceptable use policies, things of that nature, and procedures. Again, working with the vendors that we are associated with, making sure that they are aware, they are doing all that they can do to secure their systems, and where are they sharing their data, and how are they making sure that that data is staying private. Moving into technical safeguards, that's really a focus on the IT department where, as I mentioned before, making sure that people who get onto the network, they don't have access to any of the network resources. And so there are risk assessments and audits that you can do that will give you a general look as to where you are vulnerable, and you can react on that. Finally, the physical safeguards. That's really just the idea that our servers, the things that are valuable to us that hold this data and this information, they're behind locked doors. And not only are they behind locked doors, but who has access to the keys? So these are three sort of categories that cybersecurity firms are looking at and businesses are looking to bolster in order to sort of combat and reduce their risk of having a cybersecurity breach. Here in AB, what we've been doing is bringing awareness by sending out informational emails. I sent out a quiz not too long ago, which was interesting. It was a quiz to help, and I was thinking about bringing it in for tonight, but a few questions. Here's an email. Is this an authentic email or is this not, right? And as there was about 6 or 7 examples, and as you went through, it was difficult. And to be honest, I didn't necessarily score perfectly as well, but it shows you where if you hover over the certain links in the email, you're looking at the URL, you're recognizing the company that you're dealing with, it's a company that you've dealt with before, okay, this looks legitimate, so on and so forth. But the best thing about that, excuse me, is after I had sent the email, I had people in the hallway coming up to me saying, "Aim, is that a legitimate email? Like, did you really send that email?" So it was cool to see that, people were already being, very aware of it. And I had other people that have, that said, "Well, geez, I didn't do as well as I thought I would, but you know what? What I did learn from it all, if I'm hesitant on anything or I'm not sure of it, I'm just going to delete it." So it was starting the conversation, We provided some training, specific training for the finance department. I feel for those guys. They're getting emails quite a bit that, hey, I want to change my bank account. I want to do this. I want to do that. They are starting a conversation about how they're updating their procedures to make sure that they're not going to fall for any of this and have a mistake. We're piloting with the cabinet, we're piloting 2-factor authentication for our email accounts. And what that is it's a nice way to stop hackers in their tracks. I mean, I could give you guys all my password right now, but you would not be able to get into my account because I need to then, on my phone, it flashes up on my phone, says, "Hey, somebody's trying to access your account. Is this, yes or no?" Yes, now I'm in. So we're piloting that. But you have to remember, with all of these, the more that we put in place, it's a balance. It's a delicate balance, right? Between, man, this is really becoming just a pain in the neck, and it's blocking me from being more efficient as compared to, ease of use, right? So it's finding that balance. So another thing just to be aware of. Finally, what we're doing is reaching out to cybersecurity firms that are local, and through those conversations, what I'm planning to do is partner up with a cybersecurity firm. They're going to help us look at and evaluate where we are, as I mentioned, with the technical safeguards. They're going to come in, run many tests, give me a report. This is what we were able to access. This is where we're vulnerable. Now, I think we're great. I really do. But it'll be really interesting to see what these guys come up with. They're also very familiar with what's happening with the laws, and the laws are probably changing. With the new law passed, the GDPR, not only is the liability on the perpetrators who are trying to infiltrate the data, but liability then also falls on the people that are housing the data. So we need to just make sure that we're following compliance and staying up to date where these laws are probably heading. Training people, that's going to be our biggest push. A human firewall is how I put it. As I mentioned, I mean, it's that human interaction, it's the human error. So the more that we can bring awareness to the topic, the better off we're going to be. The last 2 things I just wanted to say was, as I mentioned, it's a topic that's now hitting the educational technology field. Our collaborative, our EDCO collaborative, to be completely honest, we're talking about cybersecurity all the time. It's a little unfortunate because we really want to be talking about teaching and learning, but all of us are trying to get our ducks in a row here. My friend Steve Mazzola in Belmont, he's already done several assessments. He's worked with a lot of these firms. So actually, those are the firms that I'm reaching out to and talking with right now, and emailing and calling him when needed. He's been a great resource for all of us there. The other thing I just wanted to touch upon was Cambridge Public Schools. They're doing a really great job focusing on student data privacy, making sure that as we are sharing data, and I'm not even talking about like cybersecurity breaches here, but sort of third-party add-ons for Google or the extensions, really honing in on where that data is being shared, how it's being collected, and making sure that the student data is staying private. If you go to their website, they've got everything is shared out, everything is public. They're doing a great job. So a lot of us are saying, ooh, we want to follow the model that they're using. And it's interesting. They're engaging with each and every company, and if the companies, and they say, hey, we want our own deal that you're going to, prove this, A, B, and C, student data privacy. If they can't do it, they say, show me the next product. We're not going to do it. So they've taken a real, stand on this. So, and they've been sharing everything out. So it's here, guys. It's unfortunate, but I thank you for giving me the opportunity to bring it forward, tell you guys a little bit about where we're at, and really just open up the discussion to see what you guys have. I've got a pencil here, a blank piece of paper. What are your thoughts?
I have several thoughts. So I will say Brandeis went to the Google Suite about 5 years ago because they have so many customers. They have to be great about their security. They were better than a university could be. So being on the Google Suite is a really good thing. We have Duo authentication. I forgot my phone at home one day, so I had to get this, and I had to go down the hill and get it. But it's a pain in the neck, but it's a good pain in the neck.
I agree.
Because I know nobody's getting into my accounts.
I agree.
One of the things we do, we have a lot of research data. So our highly sensitive research data goes on another network, and when you're on that network, you cannot be on the internet. So there's no internet access to that data. So that's something to think about. And then I would say that open meeting law kind of helps us a lot because like the article talked about deliberating over email. We don't deliberate over email. And so I think we do a lot less of our business over email than some of the things they talked about in the article. And I think we have really good procedures. Like if I think about executive sessions, when Beth and I were doing them when I was chair, like I'd either pick them up, she'd drop them off at my house. We were not emailing them. But I think we have good procedures because Beth was really smart about it. So as a school committee, we might want to be more deliberate about it and really think through what policies and procedures we want to have.
Yes, yes. And I know that article did speak directly to pretty much to school committee work and so on and so forth. I wanted to paint a little bit of a broader brush on just where we're at in general and bringing the topic forward. But thank you, those were great ideas.
So Amy, you mentioned working with the cybersecurity service. Is that something you're doing within the current budget, or are you planning to meet in the next budget?
It's so. As you remember, yes, I did talk about this on Budget Saturday. I don't have quotes as, right now as to what these assessments will cost, so on and so forth. I do see, and I put forward the fact that we will need some additional funding to meet some of these cybersecurity thresholds, if you will. But right now, to engage and to sign on, I will make sure that within my operating budget, we can do what we can do, without Mr. Vertolino having to give me a ring. Yes, Angie.
To continue the budget, so I remember there was a school district that got attacked and the server got frozen for, nothing can be accessed. So in the budget, do we have any kind of backup plan in case something like that happened, or insurance?
Yes, so we are all virtualized, so if it were a server that were to, to be compromised or, held at ransom, we would simply wipe it out and restore it from the day before. End users as well, they're backing up their data, and we would just wipe out the computer. That's our plan of attack with that. And we re-image the machine, and that takes care of the ransomware. So we're in a good position, but there's more that we can do.
Yeah, first of all, I want to know if, do we know that our system was, attacked, breached? Do we know that?
Yeah,
Ever?
we've had a computer with ransomware. We have.
Do we know what's behind that? I mean, who attacked and how they attacked?
It was through an email. It was through a link, through an email.
Okay, so
And like I mentioned, that we re-imaged the machine.
so maybe my suggestion is that let's focus on those majority. I mean the big percentage that the way that we were hacked or we were attacked, and then we can go from there. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is about educating our users, and it's something for leadership to talk about. There's the mandated training that occurs every year, but this is right up there in the level of importance. We need to make people aware. It's so everybody's just so they're yearning for that zero inbox. Like, let's get through these emails. And I'm painting a broad picture. Not everybody is like that, but at the same time, we just want to make sure that people are being diligent in those emails, because that's where a lot of this stuff is coming through. It's social engineering. I mean, these guys and gals they're smart. They're coming at us at every angle and in very authentic ways.
Amy, thank you first of all for this. It was really thought-provoking. And I sort of want to reiterate what you touched on right towards the end there. So while cybersecurity is part of it, I think it's also a concern around protecting the identifiable data of everyone who uses the systems here. When we hear about Cambridge Analytica hacks and that information that gets out, and in fact, we just got served an ad right before we watched a YouTube video, right? And who knows what that ad was targeting based on the usage of that person or that machine. And so, my concern is, in addition to the cybersecurity, is around how we leverage the tools that we take advantage of here, and obviously not necessarily the Google Suite, but those add-ons that we get, and how those then open us up to potential leaks around somewhat identifiable data, because every one of our students has a Gmail account and is using that for some of their schoolwork at some point. And there's that potential for that information, and that for me is almost more of a concern than the fact that our virtualized cloud-hosted software as a service is protected by somebody else.
I agree. I don't know if you guys heard the news story today about Zuckerberg in Facebook and repositioning their business. And, one of the things he said is, for a long time we were all facing outward, but I think the climate and the society and all of the things that we're hearing in the news now and this, like I said, it's really touching each and every one of us in some way, one way or another. So, it's time to turn inward a little bit, So it's trending, and I'm glad to see that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 8 on our agenda is the approval of the revised EDCO Collaborative Articles of Agreement. I'm going to hand this over to Peter, but I just want to mention that there are like 25 collaboratives in the state. We're a member of two, CASE, the Concord Area Special Education Collaborative, and EDCO. They do a lot of really creative work, the collaboratives, not only professional development, they do cooperative purchasing, They do Medicare, Medicaid billing, transportation, and of course, programming for special ed. So,
Okay, so one of the documents that is required for any collaborative is something called the Articles of Agreement. This is a document that has to be updated if there are changes to how the organization is comprised. So a couple of years ago, Winchester decided to withdraw from EDCO, and at that point, the collaborative revised its Articles of Agreement, and the school committee actually voted these. And this school committee actually voted the revised Articles of Agreement, but as typical in education today, between the time EDCO revised them based on DESI's guidelines and all of the school committee members could authorize them, DESI changed their guidelines and changed the requirements of what had to be in those Articles of Agreement. So if you look at the page labeled 9 in your packet, that actually is summarizing the changes, and it's the bottom half of the page. These are all very, very minor changes to the document that was previously voted by this school committee. So this is really procedural. We just need to vote that to make sure that EDCO can submit these in the month of March to DESI for final approval before they change their regulations on us again.
okay. If there are no questions, well, let's have a motion on the floor first. Okay.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item 10, the capital improvement update. J.D. Head is here to give us an update on the capital projects.
All right.
If you don't mind, I'm just going to say one
Oh,
more.
please do.
So this is something where we're not seeking a vote of approval, but we're seeking some support because what we're essentially proposing to do is accelerate some engineering design this spring so that we can actually begin the capital improvement plan as it was proposed to you this summer with some design work for Charter Road as well as engineering design work for a new bus loop to connect the junior high and high school and also repaving Parker Damon. But I'm going to let JD actually talk about some of the detail of that.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, like Peter said, we're seeking support to spend an additional $59,300 out of this year's operating budget to do what we're calling kind of phase 1 of this engineering work. The total, all of the work encompassing will be around $92,000, but we don't need to spend the other portion of that before July 1. We're just looking to expedite this so that we can start July 1 doing the actual physical work. I did forget to include in the memo that we talked with the capital planning subcommittee about this earlier in the week, and they had unanimous support and wanted to come out tonight and answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, JD. So I want to clarify, first of all, the funds, the $59,300 is not an additional amount of funds, but moving funds from one part of the budget to support this. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then secondly, I want to just sort of get your confirmation that part of the reason that we're looking to move this forward quickly is due to a preferential contract we have around paving for the district.
Correct. Yeah, we are under bid. We had it for last summer, and we have it for 2 additional fiscal years. Yep. Yep.
So again, you know, traditionally, if we're going to overexpend a line item in the budget, but it falls within the operating budget, the superintendent actually has the authority to be able to do that. But the reason we wanted to bring it before you tonight was because the capital plan is something that's new for the district, and because we're headed into doing some of the first real major work, we wanted to make sure we're communicating with you about that and you're aware of what's being done in order to execute the capital plan. And if you had any concerns, you certainly had an opportunity to express those before we went ahead and started the engineering work. This is something that the scope of this work will actually give us the first major conceptual design to what we could do to redesign Charter Road to increase pedestrian safety, make it more accessible for people with disabilities, potentially build in some student waiting and sitting areas along Charter Road, widen it, better sidewalks, better crosswalks. And again, as I mentioned before, creating a bus loop behind the junior high in the parking lot behind us that goes down to the high school parking lot with the idea that we will actually take bus traffic off of Charter Road and only have that for vehicles and pedestrian access. So that's really the idea. What we would accomplish with this proposal in the first batch of this money is actually to get a conceptual design for the whole Charter Road redesign, including everything I just mentioned, but the specific engineering drawings to allow us to complete the bus loop this summer and to repave the Parker Damon lot and provide a driver's access area for the preschool to be able to drop students off. So that's the specific work.
And we'll also finish the parking lots behind the high school and around towards the softball field, kind of coming around.
So I think it makes sense. The sooner we can get this kind of work done, the better. And I very much appreciate your bringing it to our attention. So I like what's happening.
I'm also, I appreciate that you're sharing it with us, and it makes perfect sense. We'll hit the pavement running for the, pun intended, for the work in the summer. I mean, the summer ends up for this kind of work to be really short. And
It's tight.
so it lets us be really ready for maybe June 19th. I just would like you to ask to please also comment on the connection with this and the Kelly's Corner work that Acton's looking at.
Oh, absolutely. Lindsay DeTono is the lead engineer on the Kelly's Corner project. She also provided us with this proposal. So we should have a very seamless transition into the connection of Charter Road with the Kelly's Corner project, which would be scheduled to begin, if all goes well, I think 2021. Yep.
Could you just be more specific about whether improvements or modifications would be made on Charter Road before Kelly's Corner's completion, the Kelly Corner completion?
Yeah, I mean, we'll certainly work this out through the conceptual design and the phasing of that, but the Kelly's Corner project will take care of basically Charter Road up until the junior high tennis court parking lot entrance right there, where there's currently there's a rock and some flowers there, right? So that's basically where the project site ends for Kelly's Corner. We will then join that. So that's what this design work will do. We'll take it from that point straight down to the high school front door. And that would be the work that we would hope to do in the summer of 2021, or 2020, right? Then they would do their work summer 2021. Hopefully they'll target that first for that summer so that we're not dealing with it in September.
Could I ask another question? The Parker Damon repaving, does that entail modifications to the design?
Not a lot. We would like to talk about a little live parking pull-off for preschool that's in that kind of like triangular lawn area. That's, it's triangular because there's walkways that make it such that. So we're thinking about trying to pull like a little active live loop into that area to get parents off the sidewalk there that are dropping off for preschool. And aside from that, we might change the curbing a little bit so you can't pull up on the curbs to make those more square, so that we have better safety for the pedestrians using the sidewalks. But the actual like flow at this time is not intended, unless they see something obvious, because the first thing we're going to do is drone everything and fly it and do some analysis around traffic movements and patterns at our peak times.
We talked about the town sidewalk before, and there's a sidewalk committee. So is this Kelly's Corner and this project and the sidewalk in town is kind of coordinated or not?
I mean, it's coordinated in that the school district has had someone, working on the planning committee for Kelly's Corner through an invitation from the town for the last 3 years. It was myself, it's been Aaron Betez most recently. And we're also working with Greenman Peterson on the design, and they also had the lead design for the Kelly's Corner project. The sidewalk committee in town is really looking more at areas that currently don't have sidewalks and trying to prioritize where they would then install them in addition to what's existing. I don't really, the Kelly's Corner project falls under the streetscapes plan for Acton, but they had existing sidewalks already.
I guess I'm focused on the Charters Road sidewalk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, likewise.
I think, we're trying to save time here, for the project to start. Is there possible for the design engineer to sharing how the design could be for link the high school and junior high and all those like Kelly's Corner? They, shared some slides with us in the meeting.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the conceptual plan, Peter and I were talking about the other day in his office that we would certainly hope to bring back and have an opportunity for feedback, et cetera, around it. It's going to be a fixture for 20 years, and certainly want to make sure we're not doing it in a vacuum. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
Item 11 is a school building update.
So we have entered into the schematic design phase of the feasibility study. So that's really getting down into much more detail in designing the building. At our last meeting, Arrow Street and Skanska shared with us kind of the next steps to happen. Next week, we've been invited to meet with a subcommittee of MSBA, which is the Facilities Assessment Subcommittee. And Peter and Marie will share highlights of our education program there, and Arrow Street will share highlights of the preferred schematic design and how the building plans at this stage, how the building will meet some of the educational program needs. Through this phase, we'll have conversations about the approach to construction. There's two different ways to do it. A traditional way where you do the full design and then you put it out for bid and you have to take the lowest bidder, or another design called construction manager at risk, where you solicit proposals and you review them and you can pick on quality, and then they're a partner at the table through the later phases of the design. And there's some risk to them because you're going to negotiate a rate ahead of time, although my understanding is in Massachusetts that risk is not great for the business. There's pros and cons to each. Arrow Street and Skanska will be talking to the committee about those pros and cons before we decide. Then we are working toward a school building committee vote in late June to vote the schematic design submission. And we'll submit the schematic design to MSBA in early July. That will be a set of designs that are complete enough to estimate, have a really good estimate of the cost. That goes to MSBA, they review it all, and then the outcome of their meeting is they will tell us how much of that cost they will reimburse. And so we submit that in July. I think we get it back in maybe August. And that sets us up to do our community education and preparing for town meeting vote, which we're thinking will be mid-November. Because then we'll know, we'll be able to say, here's the total cost, here's what MSBA is reimbursing, here's the net cost, and we'll calculate it out for Acton and Boxborough. Anything you want to add, Peter?
No, I don't think so. I think, well, maybe I'll just add one quick thing. During the schematic design phase, what we're doing right now is actually developing stakeholder groups among the faculty and administrators at the Douglas Elementary School, so that the architect actually, for every space in that building, will hold a series of meetings with the stakeholder groups to be able to solicit feedback from the teachers and staff at Douglas to be able to look at what needs to go into each elementary classroom specific to the use of that classroom. So For example, the art rooms, the art teachers have an opportunity to give input into the design of the art rooms. For general classrooms, general education teachers get an opportunity. We're also looking at including some of our special educators in our general education design teams so that as we move ourselves as a district to a more inclusive environment, we're thinking ahead in terms of what the design might look like to be able to support that. So just as an idea that this is a really impactful piece of the work that goes on. It's an opportunity for the faculty to really now start to get excited about the building and what can be with that. And you know, it will be a very, very fast 3 months of work, though, in order to get that done for the July submission.
Michael.
I have a question for Mary. In June, we're going to approve that. We're going to vote that design, and then we submit that design to MSBA, and then at that time, so MSBA is going to reveal, and then because you know, as soon as we have the design, so we're going to have the the detailed amount, right, the cost, right. So, but you are saying that MSBA is going to reveal and then going to come back and tell us how much they're going to reimburse. But this, my question is that they're going to reimburse with a fixed percentage, right? Are you saying that they could reimburse more, or they couldn't reimburse less?
So here's the deal. First of all, they recalculate what that percent is for the new phase. So we have a percentage rate for the feasibility study, but it will be a new percent, probably in the same ballpark, but the numbers the calculation that they have, the numbers will be updated, so it could be slightly different. But then there are some things that are not reimbursable. And if we still decide to do them, then it's just say they were going to reimburse 40%. They'll reimburse 40% of all the spaces they agree on and 0% of the spaces they don't agree on. So in effect, if I take the total cost and I tell you, well, in fact, they only are reimbursing an effective factor of 35%. Because there are some spaces they won't reimburse on. And then other things, like we've been told all along, they only reimburse only 8% of site costs, or 8% of the total cost of the project can be site costs. So if our site costs exceed that, then we pay 100% of anything over that 8%. If we have say we have 2 kitchens, we're going to pay 100% for one of the kitchens. Now, the building committee will work hard not to have a lot of those spaces that are not reimbursed, but there may be reasons that we feel in the long run we need to have some of them.
Yes, you may.
So, just for the reimbursable those parts, right? So the amount, the percentage will be fixed, right? It's not going to be, because I'm worrying about, they come back with, so we are, when we, try to approve this building project, and then we kind of, we were advertising, like, for example, 40% we're going to get, but eventually we get just for the reimbursable, those parts, and then we eventually we get 20%. That's, I mean, any change in that, the reimburse rate, well, I don't know, how we're going to, explain to the voters, to the taxpayers.
Well, we've always talked about that there are certain things they don't reimburse. So that's not new news to the community. And so it's a fixed percent on what they will reimburse. Okay? But most schools build a little bit of extra by their choice. And so whatever they calculate us at, if it's 40%, they will reimburse 40% of all the reimbursable spaces, but then there's another space. So if I go to town meeting and I say the cost of the full project is X, then MSBA is contributing Y dollars, so the net cost is Z. If somebody in the audience took out their calculator, they're going to say, excuse me, Mary Brolin, that's a 38% reimbursement, not a 40. And I'm going to say, well, that's because some of it was not reimbursed at all, and the things that are reimbursable were reimbursed at 40%. It'll be a fixed rate. They haven't told us what it is yet. It will be a fixed rate, yes.
Just to be really transparent with the committee, remember we voted the educational program as a committee? That is the document that's going to make the best argument to the MSBA about what should be reimbursable. That's why that document was so important. One item that we know is going to be a discussion with them. One item that we're hearing they're going to reimburse that they may traditionally not is we are looking to build a second smaller gym because we know we need that program space. We made a case for that in the educational program. We're hearing that they will likely reimburse that, I think is what we're hearing from our project manager. But the MSBA, when they approve the idea of a consolidated school, their version of a consolidated school is you have two separate schools that become one school. We're looking at our version of a consolidated school is two separate schools go into one facility, but they're still operated as two schools. And so the office space is certainly going to be a point of discussion with MSBA, where they may say, we will not reimburse you for your second school office space. And we know the values of this community, that if we try to come back to the community and say we're consolidating into one elementary school, we would never get that project passed. So we know that that's going to have to be a point of discussion with MSBA to try and get them to reimburse as much of the space. We then know on the backside that we need to look very, very closely at what we're planning for the office square footages and how we can use adjacencies and moving pieces around within the building to try and make that as efficient as possible. But that may be, in my mind, an area where we have to look at potentially taking on some non-reimbursable cost. And it really is a value judgment of the community about where we're willing to accept any non-reimbursable costs. But we know from the building committee and we know from the discussions we've had internally that our goal is going to be that all of it's reimbursable. But we know that that's never happened in any building project MSBA has approved, where everything is 100% reimbursed. So whatever the percentage they give us, we know the effective reimbursement rate will be slightly lower than that. We just don't know how much until they set it in August.
So to reiterate, what I think I'm hearing you say is that there is going to likely be a cost to having two educational programs in one consolidated building.
I think so.
Okay. Do you want to give us a little glimpse ahead of what happens when the design phase is approved by the MSBA board?
So once that's approved by the MSBA board, we know how many dollars they're going to reimburse and the rate. And we then go out to the community. We start educating. I'm hoping that community members will start advocating. We educate, they advocate, to get this passed. And we're talking with both towns about a concurrent town meeting that we're talking mid-November, and then we would have that town meeting, and then the following week, both towns on the same day would have a ballot vote because it's a debt exclusion, and so it requires both passing at town meeting and the ballot.
Thank you, Mary. Item 12 on the agenda is annual town meeting preparation. In your packet, you'll find the warrants, the articles in the warrants. We're Article 7, 8, and 9. That's a change from the typical presentation. We usually just have one. We have three this year. The first one will be the operating budget, the active assessment, and then that's Article 7. That's going to be followed by two articles that deal with the two different pillars of our capital plan. The first, Article 8, is the bond, the $7.5 million bond. We can't borrow money without town meeting's permission, so we will ask for that permission at town meeting. And Article 9 is the authorization to establish a stabilization fund for capital purposes. Now, that's something we approved, but again, that comes into existence only through approval at town meeting. So I wanted to just go through that. Town meeting first night begins April 1st at 7 o'clock. We'll have a little bit of a wait because we're Article 7, 8, and 9, and we're usually maybe 3 or something, if I remember correctly, but there's a lot of exciting stuff happening at Acton Town Meeting, so I look forward to seeing everyone there. You also have a draft of the entire index and a flyer for movie night. So please let people know that families are welcome to come and drop their kids off and they can see a movie.
We had a request today from Boxborough about whether anyone's going to be writing up the recommendations for the articles. Usually we have, the board recommendations and it goes in the warrant. And for Boxborough, it's due March 18th. So at a minimum, it would be the vote that we took, but it could be a further explanation of why we support them.
Okay. I've noted that date.
And if I can help draft those if that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So my question being new, is it, and maybe this is also helpful for new members, is it typical that members from both communities attend town meeting as the school budget's passed?
Yes. We'll have a table. Typically, we have a table, and everyone is called up, and we're all before town meeting, and the chair kind of stands at the podium next. And the same thing at Boxborough, but I think it might be different this year in Boxborough.
So we discussed this a little bit at budget the other night, but the way that Boxborough is running town meeting this year is that each of the first 2 nights is beginning with a special town meeting because there are some rather large discussions on the table, and because of that, it's very uncertain when the school committee articles or when the school district articles will come up. So I think that what we discussed at budget is that the Acton members do not necessarily need to attend the Boxborough town meeting because we're just really not sure when those articles will come up.
And you said we probably weren't going to have a table,
And we're not going to have a table, no. They're seated because they're expecting a lot of people, and the Blanchard Auditorium, the Blanchard Gym is where we hold town meeting. And they opted not to do it at the Regency, which we've done when we've had otherwise large expected crowds. So the way they have it set up is that the school committee members that attend will just be sitting in the front rows, as opposed to a table like we do in the auditorium for Acton. So Acton members are certainly welcome to attend, and I think it's always interesting to get to see what the other town's town meeting is like, because Boxborough's town meeting is quite different from Acton. So it is always interesting. But
Angie,
Can you clarify the date again?
it begins on May 13th, I believe. 13th. It's the 13th, the 15th, the 16th are the first 3 nights.
Starts on Monday, May 13th. Second night is Tuesday, May 14th. Then the third night is Thursday, May 16th. I would guess, I hope the school committee articles will happen on the first 2 nights. Yeah. Hopefully the first night.
The way that it's running is that the special town meeting will begin and then end and then proceed with the rest of the warrant articles. So the hope is that the school committee, the feeling we got when we had BLF was that the school committee would probably go one of the first 2 nights and not extend into the third.
any other questions? Michael?
Does a Boxborough member have to go to the Acton town meeting for
Typically,
this
we're all
one,
there.
or?
Yes.
Okay.
I just want to also note, in Boxborough, the budget is voted, we vote one town budget, and the district's budget is a line item in the town's budget. In Acton, it's its own warrant article, so that's one big difference, I think.
Yeah, typically, we've all gone, Michael, to both towns. This is just unusual that because of the special town meetings in Boxborough, that it's a space issue, I think. I for one, would like to be there. Yeah.
They were planning on as many want to come as possible. I think what we'll need to know ahead of time is how many do, so they can reserve the seats.
Okay. All right, thank you. Anyone else? Item 13, and in your packet, you will find a draft resolution to support the Kelly's Corner infrastructure project. Hopefully, everyone's had time to look at it. It's something that it would be lovely to vote it. And I'm going to hand things over to Maya, if you're ready to present. No? Has everybody read the draft resolution? You've had an opportunity to take a look at it? Yes, I don't think it's necessary to read it, but
I think it just reflects what we discussed after the Kelly's Corner presentation. This is entitled the Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee Draft Resolution to Support the Kelly's Corner Infrastructure Project. Whereas Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee policy recognizes that the education of students depends upon many factors, including safe physical environments, policy EC, and whereas safe physical environments include not only school buildings and the land on which schools are located, but also the areas proximal to them, including the access point leading to and from these areas, and whereas current traffic congestion in Kelly's Corner poses daily challenges for vehicular and pedestrian commuters to and from our schools along Charter Road, including buses, and the lack of continuous and safe sidewalks and bicycle lanes pose daily safety risks for students, for student pedestrians and cyclists. And, am I supposed to say whereas each time? Whereas the Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee values a coordinated approach to safety between the district and the towns. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee supports the Kelly's Corner Infrastructure Project for its integration of land use and transportation in a cohesive way that considers the safety, growth, and beautification of the physical environments proximal to our school community. And therefore, be it further resolved that it is our belief that improvements to the roadways, sidewalks, and crosswalks identified in Kelly's Corner infrastructure will positively impact the safety and wellness of our students. Okay. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Move to approve? Okay. Any discussions?
Amy moved and Paul seconded. I would just like to express my gratitude for the process with which we went through to discuss this in advance, have some time to deliberate on it, and then move forward with the resolution. I think that this is a great model for how this committee can support resolutions that might happen in either town that affect the school district as a whole, or other areas that we might want to support outside of just our region.
Mary?
I would second that, and I would suggest you keep your eye out for what's on what's going on in the communities to do this kind of thing, because I think it's great. I think it's great for our students and our community. And I also very much appreciate, I guess, Maya for writing this. It's so clear and understandable. Usually legal things, nothing personal, Ginny, but I have a little trouble with, like, what is that saying to me? But this was so clear, and I really appreciate that.
Diane deserves the credit. I wrote an entirely different draft. No, I just have to say that this was truly a collaboration. Every single one of Maya's ideas, it was formatted a little differently than what you gave, but it was not, the core of it is Maya, the heart and soul of it is Maya, so thank you, Maya. Michael is next.
Yeah, I just, before we vote it, I just want to have someone, I don't know who can clarify, how this project will be financed.
So, Michael, were you here at the presentation when the town? Okay. Okay. I believe that is already on ActonTV, so you can catch up by watching it. It's, yeah. I mean, essentially, this is the town of Acton financing it.
But didn't they get a big grant? Yeah, they got a big grant to support the town to do it.
This is on. Okay, Katie Green, Acton Board of Selectmen. So the town of Acton has already funded some money for design. We just had our 25% design hearing with the Mass Department of Transportation 2 nights ago. And at this town meeting, we're requesting additional money related to design and to get to 100% design and to do the appraisal process. All of the money that Acton is spending on this will be leveraged by about $14.2 million of state and federal transportation aid through the MPO's TIP process. So we are currently on their TIP for this project for funding in, I believe it's FY, I think JD said 2021, I think it's actually 2022, but to stay on that timeline, we need to get the funding, the rest of the funding at this year's town meeting. So that's essentially it. But so it's some money from Acton, just Acton, not Boxborough, and then it's $14.2 million of state and federal funding.
So I would ask that we change in the title, we have draft resolution. Once we vote it, if we could just get rid of the draft.
Did I do that whole thing with the mic? Okay. Well, motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Okay, the last thing before our executive session is subcommittee member reports. So Amy, policies first, so take it from here.
So the policy subcommittee met on February the 26th. In your packet, we have for a second read and hopefully a vote tonight, policy GCE. And we looked at that again and incorporated some comments that Diane sent to us. So there are some changes, but they're pretty minimal. Marie, do you want to comment anymore? So we're asking for your vote.
I will add, we also had a request to update the procedures that go along with the policy. So the policy is up here, in here, the changes are in blue, the procedure is updated, and then behind that is the policy as it was when you did the first read. So it may be a little bit confusing, but thank you for the feedback from the committee. And
so we are asking to vote this evening.
Okay, do I hear a motion?
Second, Paul.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And then we have a first read on policy JFABA, and I'm going to let Marie speak to that.
so this is an update to the non-resident tuition charges policy, which has not been updated since prior to regionalization. So some of the changes were that. And there are two different types of tuition that are spoken to in this policy. One is a case in which we do utilize tuition charges, and that is for specific special education programs that we have in our district that some of our neighboring districts may not have, and so they may send their students to us and we would charge them tuition. Our occupational development program at the high school is an example of a program that has, over time, had students tuitioned in. Those students districts would pay tuition to our district, and whenever that tuition changes, we bring it to the school committee for a vote. So that's the special education tuition. There's some language in here about tuitioning students other than special education. We really don't do that. If we were going to do that, we would vote to accept choice students, which we haven't done for a long time. But we left some of the language in here about how to calculate it, because there's some language in the law that if somebody were to attend Acton-Boxborough who was not a resident of Acton or Boxborough, and you were to find that out, you have the ability to charge them back tuition. So there's language in how you would set the tuition rate. So we left the language in here, but with the understanding that we're not accepting tuition students on a space because of space, and if we did accept students, we'd do it through the choice program.
Okay. Do you have a deadline for receiving feedback on this?
Yeah, so our next, sorry, do you want to? Oh, so our next policy subcommittee meeting is March 19th. So if we could please have any comments back by the previous Friday, that would be very helpful.
So the last paragraph and the last sentence in it talks about the tuition, how it's set, and that it's an average expense per pupil, including the average of regular education and special education costs. Is there a chance that we would have a student come in with special education needs that exceed the average special education costs, and then are we responsible for those?
Once you accept a student, you are responsible for costs. Since this school choice law, you really don't charge tuition for Massachusetts students from other districts. The school choice rules apply. You get a fixed dollar amount for students, but if a school choice student qualified for special education, there is additional money charged to the sending district to reflect the costs of the special education. So,
Okay, budget.
So budget met this past Tuesday. We discussed the presentation that Peter and Marie went to FinCom and gave. And we also discussed preparations for a town meeting, and I think the next meeting is in, do you remember, Beth? It's also March 19th, and we're going to be going over the presentation, and that's it. I don't think I missed anything. Okay.
Capital improvement?
Capital Improvement Committee met on the 27th last week and discussed basically the progress of where we're at for the projects for next year. And like JD mentioned, he shared with us the plan and some of that pre-design work that they're looking to do for the connector road. And we are, like we said before, we're sort of extending out the time between our meetings now, so our next meeting isn't until April 10th.
ALG? Paul, were you there at the last ALG meeting?
I was, yeah, but because we had kind of come to understanding early on in the season that there was not a lot to discuss, although there is, still with the building projects, we're planning to meet one or two more times than typical. I don't have the dates in front of me.
And BLF?
You pretty much already gave the update. Peter mentioned that the select board voted unanimously to support the articles, the stabilization fund, and really it was just about the town meeting dates and what to expect at town meeting. The next meeting is, I don't remember, in a couple weeks. in the future.
If I may, I thought it would be on the agenda. I'm realizing it's not, for Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
In the past couple of meetings, we really have been focused on the preparing for the articles, but on Monday, Peter as they did with the Finance Committee, Peter and Marie were there for the Board of Selectmen. And I got to say that the presentation was I mean, I've had the benefit of seeing the budget get assembled from September on, but this was a very clear, concise summary of what the budget's all about. So it was kudos to Peter and Marie for doing that. But also presenting right after them was Minuteman, and I gotta just shout out for them because the building project is still on time and on budget, and their doors will be opening. They're planning to have the doors opening September 2019, this coming September. What Pam Norse mentioned was that they're renewed to level 1 from DESE. They've earned blue ribbon status from the U.S. Department of Education, and they have been approved for a new vet tech program. So there's really good things going on at Minuteman.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. Mm-hmm.
The next BLF meeting is, drumroll please, March 19th.
Are you kidding? No. Okay. All right. All right. I'm just going to draw your attention in the FYI section before we convene into an executive session that the League of Women Voters is having a candidate forum on Saturday, March 16th at 1 p.m. at Conant. The West Acton Sewer Advisory Committee Forum is Thursday, March 14th at 7 in Town Hall. And you have election calendars in here too, if you want a reminder. So is there anyone else wants to say anything before we move into executive session? Angie?
I just want to clarify in the next meeting. So we have the meeting on March 25, the 25th for the workshop. So what kind of input and process that we expect to, can you clarify?
For the workshop?
Yeah.
We'll be sending out a memo about that.
Okay.
The next meeting is March
21st. The next school committee meeting.
We have a regular school committee meeting on March 21st, and then the workshop on the 25th.
And just for your information, the March 21st school committee meeting will take place. We're in the administration building, the old Danny's place. We're going to revisit that and then make a decision about whether or not we might want to move venues.
Can I just mention one quick thing? I just want to draw your attention to one of the FYIs, which is a thank you letter that we sent to ABSAF and Middlesex Savings Bank. If you recall, they donated $50,000, which is an incredible donation. So we are using this after some research on different options. We are using this to purchase a set of stage curtains for the high school and also for a new scoreboard at the high school field house, because we think that will have broad impact on a number of students in a variety of programming areas. So thank you to Marie for coordinating all of that and working with ABSAF, but thank you to both of those organizations for the significant donation.
We have a need to meet in executive session now pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Purpose 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the Office Support Association, American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, and the Acton-Boxborough Education Association, because an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee. Is there a motion? Okay, we will now do a roll call vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Okay, yes, and we will return to open meeting for the sole purpose